Hey guys, Jess here. So welcome back to my video. This is my quality assurance manager, Harley. You've seen her in my logo. So I just wanted to let you guys know that this video is about me making 100 candles. So I'm recording this after my whole debacle of recording the past 10 days of working. So I got reached out to a tech company for an event, I love you too, girl, to make 100 bleeding skull candles. So I thought it would be a great opportunity to just kind of show you guys my process. I'm kind of new to the YouTube world, so enjoy. So this is my largest order I've ever had. The most I've made for an individual order was probably 3 or 4. And that's not including like all individualized customers. So it's a challenge. I was a little bit apprehensive because I'm actually in the middle of moving to another state. And as all of you know, if you've moved before, that can be very stressful. So on top of moving and literally picking up my entire life here in New York to go to another state, I had to fulfill this order, which is a blessing because I did take a major hit after Etsy shut my shop down. That is another story for another day, or you can check out my previous videos about that. If you followed me on Instagram, you'll definitely hear the history about that. I also had to reach out to my supplier for some new molds. As you can see, these have seen better days. It doesn't really affect the scent, even though the dyes kind of stained it. But I only have about 10 molds, so I had to order a bunch more to make this a little more efficient. And I actually don't have any help because, it's just me running this business. My best friend was going to come and help me, but in the middle of making all this, we got slammed with that huge snowstorm that was 2 feet in New York, and that was just another added challenge. But here's my first day. I'm just making do with the molds that I have now. It's a long process. I had to inspect some of the molds, make sure there's no dirt in them, and sanitize the whole workstation. The longest part about all this is math, as well as making sure I have the correct measurements, all the correct supplies, and making sure all my formulations are correct. I actually started making skull candles about 2 years ago. I was actually inspired after just realizing that nothing really fits my aesthetic. So I obviously am obsessed with skulls, but I do make container candles as well. But I really do enjoy making skull candles because each one comes out pretty unique. So it's a long, drawn-out, tedious process because you have to make sure the layers are perfectly laid out okay. And it's a little tricky when you have to make sure the temperature is regulated, you have it at the perfect temperature for mixing all the dyes and the fragrances and whatnot. And it's especially difficult in a very cold garage. So I have the second floor of my garage kind of as my workspace. And I do have heat, but it's not as effective. I mean, it is a good thing because I don't want my candles to melt, because I do a soy-based wax with my skull candles, and then I use a coconut-based wax for my container candles. So it's kind of a blessing in disguise, but when you're working in a shop where you're trying to keep your wax moldable at an appropriate temperature, it poses a bit of an issue, especially when your heat's not working. We try to keep it around 60 degrees with these freezing temperatures in New York. It's been down in the single digits on most days. My little heater can only do so much, as well as sometimes it does shut off. So it's a little bit of an uphill battle, but we make do with my workspace. And it is a very messy procedure. It is a kitchen counter that I'm working at, but it's actually not a kitchen. I just used a counter to work on. And I have a bench behind me. It's a steel bench. That's usually where I make my jewelry, as well as some of my other experiments that I have going on. But it's very, very important to protect your workspace, especially with wax, because it is a pain in the butt to clean up. And as you can see here, I'm just inspecting my shells to make sure it's nice and opaque. And we're gonna move on. Obviously, as you can see, I forgot to record me pouring the quote-unquote blood into my candles. So there we go. And I let this set for a few hours, typically overnight, but I can't do it now because I have to rock out 100 of these, and time is of the essence. So I bought this a couple of months ago during my last kind of bulk order, kind of wholesale. Don't mind my beat up double boiler pot right there. So we're gonna give it a shot again for this bulk order for skull candles. I had to read directions again. I actually have them right over there, and we'll see how this goes. I also have like I'm out of breath because I had to carry this through the snow, up the stairs in my loft, from my house to my garage. So it's about like 200 yards or so, maybe a little more, and I'm already short. So we're gonna fire this up, start melting the wax while I get the rest of the wax. I have 20 pounds here. I have to get 40 more pounds back at my house, along with other skull modes and everything. And I'm hoping to reach 20 or 30 by the end of today. It is day 3, but I had to take a break yesterday because the Amazon guy couldn't make the shipment because of all the snow that we got. And we're getting more today into tomorrow. So I'll be working hard on this project. As you can see, I'm not the conventional quote-unquote influencer. My workspace is pretty tight, pretty cramped, as well as a little messy. But hey, if you don't have a messy workspace, that means you're not working. I do clean up. It's just a little chaotic between the move and getting all this together and rearranging some space, because I do have to store my skull candles somewhere when they're completed before packaging. So hey, you just make do with what you got, right? So I got my molds a few minutes after I got my wax and whatnot. And I was grateful because at this time we were going to get that snowstorm coming in that night. So it takes a while to unpackage, make sure all the silicone molds are intact and of good quality and there's no defects in it, as well as lining up where the wick is going to go. It takes a little bit of time, but you got to flow to it and you kind of power through it. So this was my very first bulk order with a client for a special occasion, and I was really nervous about it, but after that, I knew that I could do this, and since I have so much pride in my work, I knew it was going to be successful. But of course, we're all human and we just have that whole concept of self-doubt, and I just wanted to make sure that I made a good impression, as well as just kind of bringing the best of what I have. This was also a great opportunity to kind of expand my reach, because I do struggle with social media and using the internet because I don't really know it that well, as much as I do research on it. But hey, if I don't try, I'll never freaking know, right? As you can see, this process gets quite messy. So I always try to keep all my materials separate from home. It's a good thing I was fortunate enough where I'm a homeowner and I actually have a separate workspace outside my house. The only thing is I don't have any running water And you have to clean wax and fragrance oil with hot water to ensure that it's out of your materials and it won't interfere with anything else. But it's a little difficult because I only have one plumbing system in my house. So I usually have to make sure the entire sink is completely cleared out. I sanitize it and everything, and basically just keep everything separate. I try to scoop out as much wax as I can out of my wax warmer because wax is actually very bad for your plumbing. So if you can, always scoop it out by hand and just toss it in the garbage. Another thing that makes this kind of a long process, especially making them in bulk, is the temperature control. Like I said before, I am doing it at a hotter temperature where fragrance and color will bind, but with the silicone molds it can be a little tricky because sometimes when it's a little too hot, it doesn't exactly want to do what I want it to do. So it takes a while. So I just finished pouring all these shells. It took me roughly about an hour. So what takes the most time is doing all the math for so many shell candles, because you have to cut it in half between shell and blood and blah, blah, blah. And then you have to account for shrinking too when it comes to soy. So that's a pain in the ass. Like, as you can see, this little wick right here wants to go that way because it's shrunk in the wax. And that's just typical of soy wax. Here's also another batch that I did. That was the one I got shorted because my scale was off. So I'm actually waiting for my new scale to come in on Amazon. Hopefully it is way better. And those are 4 completed from the last batch. And I got these going on. And now I have to make one direct to consumer that I sold on TikTok. So this is going to be a lavender. It's my Bitch Be Cool scent. So I'm going to do that. And then I got to go coach CrossFit. Well, first I have to run my cracket around and then go coach. And wait for these to set so I can set up the blood and let it sit overnight so I can complete the shell and then rinse and repeat all over again tomorrow. Should I? Lisa? Yeah. Yeah. All right, so I forget what day it is. It's technically like day 4 or 3 of production. So I was supposed to get a huge shipment from Brambleberry, and of course, because it was a 3-day weekend, and they apparently, even though I paid for second day air, they don't fly out or do their processing on the weekends for UPS. It's not getting here until tomorrow. So technically, I've been waiting like 6 days for this huge shipment of oil. Right now, I'm at about 35 skulls completed, but I have all these to fill with blood. Luckily, I have to demold these, so I'm going to start packaging the half I have, well, the 35 I have completed today. So hopefully my oil comes in the morning, but I'm just going to take this day to kind of reset my workspace as well as pack some more because I am moving. So, and I kind of got to get my shit together. So yeah, so this is going to kind of be a rest day. I have 2 shipments, 2 orders to ship out. So I'm going to do that and run some errands and get some fitness in and, you know, recenter. And then tomorrow I'm definitely going to try and crank a bunch of these out because I want them done by Monday, ready to ship out, packaged, labeled, everything. Okay, so we're on the next day, and thankfully my shipment got delivered early. And the trouble about having such a large handmade order with skull candles is I am vertically challenged, and I don't have the height to pour 60 ounces of wax gracefully. And that's one lesson I did learn from this experience, is that I really need to get one of those candle wax dispensers. It's kind of like cake batter or pancake batter dispensers that restaurants use, because I am making an awful mess right here. And you kind of want to pour the wax nice and smooth because, like I said before, it is at a slightly higher temperature than what I usually do. And because it's so cold in my garage, as you saw on the last snip, I had my down coat still on. I have to keep the pitcher on a hot plate so it doesn't harden too quickly. But, you know, it's a lesson learned at the end of the day. So every once in a while I would have to like put the pitcher back down, especially when I noticed that the wax was starting to harden a little too quickly. And with this order that I am going to gain some profit from, I'm definitely going to get some more tools that I'm going to need for bulk orders if I do this again. Or not if, when I do this again. All right, so in hindsight, this was a good idea because dealing with those large pitchers filled nearly to the top, I was going to make a mess anyway, but as they cool off and you're pouring, some of them come out uneven and splotchy. So I'm definitely going to have to trim some of this off once it dries off. So, yeah, great. Fun times. But at least this batch is order, and I have one more large batch, and then that is it for this bulk order. So I'm going to focus on packaging the ones I finished a couple of days ago, because I'm going to have to start making room and start packaging. So there we go. All right, so I'm almost done with batch 3, and I have to unmold these as soon as I get back from the gym. So, well, I'm going to set the base first and then unmold them. So it'll take a couple hours to set because the storm's going to hit in the middle of the night. And I want to make sure these molds are clean before I lose power and heat. And, you know, because if I lose power, I can't make any candles in here. My generator doesn't support the garage, but it does support my house. So it's crunch time. Let's get this done so I can ship these out by the end of the week coming. So I was fortunate enough to not lose power, which is a rarity in my neighborhood because we always lose power. So I was able to finish up that batch and make another one. I don't remember what batch I was on this one because I honestly started to lose count. And when I was doing inventory for this order, I had to count about 5 times. But thank God I did not lose power and I was able to crank these candles out as quickly as I could. All right, so to print out my QR codes, because my vendor said I could place my QR codes on my box, it was coming out great, as you can see, until about halfway it's starting smudging. So I'm gonna have to clean the header and print these out in probably batches of 25, which means I wasted a bunch of labels unnecessarily. So I'm just gonna count. All right, so it's packaging day. I usually package all my skull candles in a little box, and I was grateful enough to have my husband help me prepare all the boxes, but I had the back-breaking work of putting all my stickers in and the custom labels on that my client wanted, and they were good to go. I was so happy to finish this in a timely manner where I could finish packing for my big move as well as get these out in time to my client, because they actually have a timeline of their own to ship this out because these are actually gifts to each of their clients. So they have 100 obviously. And it was very accomplishing to to complete this. So this is the first time I'm packaging so many candles in one shipment, and I wanted to be a little more protective of it. I understand they're pillar candles and people are like, oh, it's pillar candles. Well, they can still break, and the boxes are there just for more aesthetics as well as a little bit more protection. And thankfully UPS is shipping these because I would not trust the postal service with this. So I took a little bit more extra care to make sure these were packaged appropriately. Now, one thing I did notice as I proudly am staring at this beautiful shipment that I packaged, and I didn't realize it till hours after the fact, I had already dropped the package off at UPS, was that I completely fucked up and printed the wrong label for these candles. Yes, a fatal mistake if you're a small business. So these labels were designed by my client because this is actually a gift for their clients. And they sent me two versions. So the first one was basically the skull. So the only difference is that they wanted the scent on the label. So the first version was a very small text and they updated it to a larger. And I guess I had my final brain cell malfunction and accidentally printed either a mix of both old and new or just the older version. Because when I looked at my station where I print, both versions were on there. I emailed my client and she was very apologetic and understanding, so I am quite grateful that I had someone like her. And it's gone! And of course, everyone's least favorite part is the aftermath of cleaning all this up, which took a while, and I still have some cleaning up to do, as well as packing my whole shop. But it's done! Now after this cleanup, a quick getaway with my husband. My husband treated us to a trip to New Orleans where I got to look at some cemetery graves, met this cute, adorable cat, and saw my favorite band. Thanks for watching!